Welcome to Texans Cookout, the bye-week edition. Chancellor Johnson joined alongside Big Sarge of Big Sarge Media, Jonathan Alexander of the Houston Chronicle, and DJ Bianime of ESPN. Right now, the Texans sit at 2-3 on the season as they have the week off after beating the Baltimore Ravens. And by beating, I mean they beat their behind. Well, let's jump right into that as the Texans had the blowout victory in Baltimore. DJ, we talked about what Nick Caley has been cooking. At first, you said it was bland. Last week, you said it was a little bit of salt after they explode for 44 points. What did Nick Caley break out of his cabin?
I mean, it was still like a lot of the same stuff. They're just executing better. But like I can't give. I mean, I'm gonna give credit where credit's due. At the end of the day, 44 in the NFL against whoever you're going against is impressive and has to be respected. I'm just like not head over heels because they put a 44 against basically a preseason defensive unit. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they can do something like that, it don't gotta be 44, but like 30 plus against Seattle, or even like 27 against Seattle. All right, now they're in my eyes trending in the right direction. So that's kind of where I'm at, and so forth. So like, it's good that they handled business. But that defense was so depleted. It's like, all right, I don't want to put too much stock into that because it's a week-to-week league, and you got to contextualize everything just so you don't get too high or you don't get too low. So that's kind of where I'm at on that front. So obviously I was very low, ironically, on the offensive scheme and play calling, but I feel like, it's gotten better and it's gotten better. The execution's been better. So it's improved from the first 3 weeks. Obviously, gotta give respect to that. But I'm not gonna go from over here way over here because they beat up on a team missing basically 5 All-Pro, Pro Bowl type players, and even some starters that aren't even that good. I mean, not starters that aren't that good. Missing some starters that are quality players. I'm not gonna go over the hill
still here
on that one. So,
Sarge, what about you? What did you make of their blowout win over the Ravens?
I'm gonna tell you like this. I think that was something that the Houston Texans they definitely needed. That offense definitely needed something like that, something that can help build their confidence, especially the way that they played at the end of the third quarter against the Tennessee Titans, and then in the fourth quarter, and then the way they just put it all together. And I'm gonna put it like this. I mean, and I heard DJ did make a great point about the defense of the Baltimore Ravens, but even I still feel like, and this is just my opinion alone, that Ravens defense was already bad. So I don't think that the Texans, if they would have played the Ravens with their starters, that they would have put up 44 points. But I still believe that they would have beat the Ravens because, that with the starters in on both sides of the ball, that Ravens team has looked bad this year, and especially that defense. I think that even before the injuries, they were ranked like 32nd in the league as far as defense is concerned, and that's weird when you talk about the Baltimore Ravens and their defense always being top 5. But what I liked and what I said in the pregame before, what I said on my pregame video was the Texans shouldn't worry about the injuries. They shouldn't have worried about playing against the Baltimore Ravens team that's depleted with injuries. Just come in and work on the things that you need to work on. There are certain things that you need to work on in that offensive system that you need to keep implementing and building on. And so you come in and you worry about what you can do. Doesn't matter who's on the other side. Just run the plays that you want to play. Try to move the ball, run the ball, do whatever it is that you're trying to do. Because the defensive side of the ball for the Texans, they were going to do what they needed to do anyway. But that offense is what needed the confidence booster. And then, we've heard wide receiver Nico Collins talk all the time about confidence. And so, it was just good to see them, going to this bye week with some confidence. And, a win is a win. You can only play who's on the field.
Jonathan, how'd you see that win on Sunday?
Yeah, of course, I'm not totally convinced that they've turned things around. I think we need to see the Texans do that against better competition, and they're going to have much better competition these next 5 games. But I will say this. I mean, because they were going up against the Ravens, who were so depleted, they needed to put up a 40 piece on them, and they put up 44 points. So you have to give credit that they did what they were supposed to do, because if this had been a close game, if they had only put up 3 touchdowns, then we really needed to be talking about Nick Caley and whether they need to make some significant changes to this offense. So the good news for the Texans is they did what they're supposed to do. They, had their best offensive performance. I thought the positives in particular were the fact that they only committed 4 penalties as a team, and 2 of those were on offense. When you do that, that's when you're able to dig deep in your playbook. That's when you're able to hit on explosive plays. And I think the Texans found the formula. Now, better defenses will make that difficult, but at least the Texans saw what's possible from Sunday's game. So while I'm not totally convinced, I think that there were positive things that they can take with them after the bye week.
You know what? I'm with you on that, because I think it's easy to dismiss, as I've seen some people do, that, it's just the Ravens. That's, they're 1 banged up and 2 have had a lot of struggles. But as Jonathan said, imagine if they didn't play that well. Imagine the conversations we would have had then, where, it's an extension of the conversations about Nick Caley and if he's the right fit, the extensions of some of the early chatter about, D'Amico Ryans and his ability to potentially lead this team to where they ultimately want to go. And so at the end of the day, as Sarge touched on, you can only play who's in front of you. And so the fact that they had their best offensive performance, not just of the season, but something that really of in franchise history, 44 points. And yes, once again, you can't say that without mentioning that Baltimore was extremely depleted. But as we kind of touched on earlier, this Ravens defense has already been bad for most of the season. So now, to me, the question to me now is this the right time for the bye? Right? Like, I would like to see them follow up with this immediately and see if this is real, or if this was just a matter of playing a bad Baltimore team. The one thing I do want to mention, though, is, as we talked about, the hype of Woody Marks over the past couple weeks or so. How about Nick Chubb with his best performance of the season? And once again, how much of this is just a bad Baltimore Ravens defense versus could they maybe find something, with Nick Chubb maybe getting better as the season goes along, because we already know the talent is there for Woody Marks and potentially a 1-2 punch, because we'll talk about more of this on the show about Joe Mixon. I don't know if that brother is coming back this season. And so this might be who you have to ride with for the majority of the year moving forward between Woody and Nick Chubb. And if Chubb can give them, more games like he had, as we saw on Sunday, then this offense could continue to improve as the season goes along. What did you guys maybe make of Nick Chubb? Was it just the Ravens, or did you see something out of the veteran running back, DJ?
I think it's just the Ravens. I mean, he's been solid, so it's not like he hasn't done anything that he hasn't done before. I mean, week 1 he ran for 60 yards. Week 5 he ran for 61 yards. Like, he's pretty much get you in that 30 to 70-yard range. He'll probably have 100 randomly out of nowhere one of these games. He's kind of like, thunder and lightning between him and Woody. Woody only had 24 yards rushing. I don't want to touch too much on Woody, but Nick Chubb was straight. You know what I'm saying? Like he I don't think Nick Chubb's been a problem this year, at all. I think if the inside zone, the duo, things of that nature is working, he could be effective just running downhill, where he doesn't have to necessarily use his top end speed, rely on his top end speed. He can just kind of get downhill, and that top end speed can have less yards to, pick up per se. But again, I think he was fine. You know what I'm saying? I don't think he's been an issue at all. In all honesty, so. Come on, Chance.
You had any thoughts?
Come on, Chance.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Asleep back there, bro.
Hey, you know what? I'll go after Jonathan. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, Chance falling asleep.
You asked about Nick Chubb. I think that Nick Chubb has shown that he's a serviceable back. I still don't consider him a playmaker, like a Joe Mixon type. He doesn't obviously have that same explosiveness he once had before the injury. It was interesting. I went back and looked at the stats. His 61-yard performance was the most he's had since 2023. So And for that to be his best game, I think he has limitations. Having said that, I think the Texans can have a lot of success. You look back at the film, they've shown how they can be multiple, whether that's gap or zone scheme. They had a lot of really good blocks. They opened up holes for both Woody and Nick Chubb. And I think that was on one occasion. Well, y'all can't hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I think there was on one occasion where Woody Marks, if let's say Jake Andrews had got to the second level on one of those blocks, or it was Ed Ingram, he would have sprung one for a touchdown. But I think that there's optimism because the run blocking is a lot better. But as far as Nick Chubb goes, I think he's going to be one of those 1A, 1B back. I don't see him fully taking over the number one role. I think Woody Marks is going to have something to say about it.
Well, listen, we touched on it a little bit about Joe Mixon, the guy who was supposed to be the Texans RB1 coming into the season. Got a chance to hear from Nick Caserio earlier today. Obviously, the brother has not played football or really been out on the football field, at least to my knowledge, really since we really hadn't been pretty much this entire offseason. Fans want to know, what do you guys think? Will we see Joe Mixon this year? Sarge?
Well, let me say this before I touch on talking about Joe Mixon. I want to give my take real quick about Nick Chubb, and from the previous question that was asked. I think that Nick Chubb's success is going to depend on how much Nick Caley can scheme him open. I took a look at the touchdown play that he had. I think it was 27 yards for the touchdown run that he had. I think it was in the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. But on the touchdown run, if you go, you will see that Nick Caley took a little bit of Sean McVay's playbook, and I'm glad that he's starting to lean more towards the the Los Angeles Rams playbook than he is the New England Patriots playbook. You remember in week 1, the play that pretty much sealed the game for them was when they when the Rams put Puka Nacua in motion and stopped him in between the tackle and the guard and ran him through that gap, and he got lined up one-on-one with Jalen Petrie, but he was able to get that separation. He caught the pass for the first down, and they was able to seal the game, run the clock out. If you go back and you look at Nick Chubb's touchdown run, you'll see that they have an extra lineman on the field and Blake Fisher on the right side next to Titus Howard. And he brings Xavier Hutchinson into motion and stops him in between Blake Fisher and Titus Howard. Now, one thing that I like about that play is because, maybe they have a pass option off of that, but they brought him in between to make him an extra blocker. And he was able to, Xavier Hutchinson was able to engage and help, open up the hole there. The line did a great job on that. And so if Nick Caley can continue to scheme up things like that for Nick Chubb, then I think that, we'll see maybe 1 or 2 100-yard rushing games if he can get the amount of carries. If they don't start leaning more to, putting it on Woody Marks and him wanting to see more from him. So I just like that. I'm just saying if they're able to scheme, if Nick Caley's able to scheme up Nick Chubb, I think that he'll be a very productive back and something that they're going to need for the season because, like we said, when Nick Caserio said today, damn, it's a lot of Nicks, Jalen's and Jadens. Good Lord. But when Nick Caserio said there's really no timetable for Joe Mixon, he didn't do nothing but confirm for me that I don't think that we're going to see Joe Mixon the rest of the year. If we don't see him the rest of the year, it depends on what they see in Woody Marks and depends on what they see in Nick Chubb on what the future for Joe Mixon is. But I feel like even if he comes back, let's just say by week 10, it's still going to take him a while to get back into game shape. And if I'm the Texans, if I can't have him back by week 8, I don't want him back on the field.
DJ, how you feel about that?
I agree with Sarge. I think that makes a lot of sense. I know, right? I agree with Sarge.
We need to have those stream buttons like when they make the sound effects.
I agree with Sarge because, like, like he hasn't played football in a long time, bro. Like, he's been playing a football game put on pads since January. That's a long time. All you're doing is setting up for a soft tissue injury or another type of injury. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I completely agree with Sarge 1,000%. Like, if he's not back, maybe not week 8, but at least by like week 10. Yeah, I think just kind of wrap that bad boy up and let's just get ready for for that. Can it be different if you like, let's say you're participating in training camp, participate in mini camp, and then like he got hurt early training camp, then all right, I could hear it. Like I remember a couple years ago, Jalen Ramsey got hurt in early training camp, and then he came back like mid-season, right? And it wasn't like he was not participating in OTAs or anything like that. This is totally different. Like the brother doesn't really participate in much stuff with the team, so I just wouldn't want him to rush back and then end up getting hurt again. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of my viewpoint on that.
Well, to that point, and this for anybody, what's the difference in potentially Joe Mixon coming back? And as you mentioned, you don't want to rush him back because he hasn't played in such a long time, and a guy that maybe tears his ACL and doesn't participate, tears his ACL in the middle of the season, and he doesn't participate. He's not really as much on the field either, right? And he works his way back to get back middle of the season without really doing a ton of practices either. What's the difference between maybe Mixon and a guy like that?
Well, sometimes those guys usually practice. They do something at training camp where it's like they might be off to the side doing stuff. We didn't see Joe Mixon at all, bro.
True.
So I think that's the biggest difference.
Yeah. There's a ramp up period for those guys.
Yeah, exactly.
They're allowed to practice. I mean, Joe Mixon has been in and out of the building. He hasn't been there full time. When they first learned about this, or they were hoping that his foot will respond to treatment, and Nick Caserio saying that he's made progress is a good sign, but it doesn't mean that he'll come back. And I think if it, he said they'll find out something in the next week. I think they'll determine whether he's out for the season or whether he can come back. I think that's what they're waiting on. And if he does come back, like you all said, like if it's late in the season, then I think you run the risk of him suffering other injuries. I think, if they're in a good spot, and I'm not saying they should be desperate if they're not in a good spot, but if they're in a good spot, they ought to consider, just sitting him for the rest of the year. That's assuming that he's able to come back, but they just should sit him for the rest of the year, allow him to be healthy for next year, because he's obviously dealt with these foot and ankle injuries throughout his career. When you have injuries like that, you run the risk of re-injuring it. So why put him in that situation if at this point right now he's not good to where you believe he can come back?
And well, before you go, Chancellor, I want to add this in to ask the room the question, but specifically you, Chancellor, do you think that with the amount of carries that he has on his body for the amount of time that he's been in the NFL, even just trying to come back from this, because we know what is the life of a running back? 4 years, an average running back?
It's probably something like that, but like once they get closer to 30, that's when it can go off the rails. But again, like I said, like because Christian McCaffrey missed a lot of last year. But like as I said, like he was practicing in camp and then like was on and off, was kind of getting shut down, and then got shut down for some months and then came back. So it can be done where like you might have just, limit yourself for one season and come back more fresh, in all honesty. So I think that might, because I think Christian McCaffrey's injury might have been worse in terms of the end result, the end potential result, because he had bilateral tendonitis in his Achilles, I believe.
But he's younger than Mixon, though, right?
Nah, they both about the same age. Right? Yeah, they the same high school class and all. So
okay, I didn't.
Yeah. So
I'm not as worried about the carries or the mileage at this point in his career. It's more so just about like what does he look like coming off this specific injury? Because last time we saw Joe Mixon, whether it was in the postseason to just overall last year, in his first year with the Texans, he was really good, right? Like he was a 1,000-yard rusher. he was physical. He was able to find explosive runs. So the last time we did see Joe Mixon on the field, he was really good. And obviously he was an addition to this offense. And talent-wise, the Joe Mixon that we last saw, he would be the RB1, even with Woody Marks and even with Nick Chubb. But the question is, like as you mentioned, to me, it's not so much about his mileage overall. It's just about how does this guy look with this foot injury that's clearly been keeping him off the field for months, right? That he just haven't done any on the field work. That's my main concern when it comes to Nick Chubb. Not Nick Chubb, excuse me, Joe Mixon. If anybody didn't have anything else on that, I did want to touch on the defense before we talk big picture about the Texans.
Oh, wait. One more thing, and I know we got to hear, but I gotta ask this question. They both come back healthy this season. Who are you taking, Tank Dell or Joe Mixon?
I mean, if both of them are healthy, like healthy,
yeah,
like you don't risk injury. I mean, I think Joe Mixon has more of an impact than what Tank Dell brings. Not that Tank Dell doesn't bring an impact, because he does. But I think Joe Mixon is more important to the offense than Tank Dell was. And I think that was evident last season.
I think it kind of like, do they go back to what they were before the injury?
That's a good question. I mean, what is your look? It's your answer, so you tell me.
So let's set the parameters like this. You get the last version of them. So you get the last version of what you saw in Joe Mixon, or the last version of what you saw of Tank Dell.
Because Joe Mixon had 1,400 yards from scrimmage and 12 touchdowns. That's a lot of production.
Yeah, because Joe led the team in like scrimmage yards, playoff touchdowns. Like, Joe was. Yeah, I'll probably go Joe, because then now you got Joe, Nick, and Woody. Yeah.
Okay, but does Tank not compliment Nico on that opposite side, and is he not productive as well? I mean, and of course, like I said, I'm not arguing and I'm not trying to debate. And what you all said about Joe Mixon is good, but also, I mean, Tank is productive as well. And if you let's just say you put Tank over there and you put Christian Kirk in the slot, or you put Xavier Hutchinson in the slot, does Tank not give you that same sort of pop or production on the field as well?
It's tricky because I think in that offense, granted, in Bobby's, the receivers have to block too, but I feel like in this one, like they're motioning them in to get downhill and block linebackers. Because like some of the plays you mentioned about with Xavier against the Ravens, I think they're doing that week 1 and week 2, I believe they're doing those same things. So like that kind of limits what you can. I mean, Tank's role specifically on the field kind of gets a little limited because of you're not going to do that with Tank. You know what I'm saying? And in all honesty, like Tank being on the field would actually also be a tell. Like, all right, they're more likely to pass the ball than not, because they're not going to have him motion in to go block somebody, go block a linebacker and run up the B gap and try to creatively go block somebody in that aspect. So yeah,
I mean, look, Tank Dell is important. He makes the offense more powerful, but he's not more important than Joe Mixon. I mean, Joe Mixon does so much for you in both the run game and the pass game and blocking. So Joe Mixon is literally top 5 running back when healthy. So probably 5, but when healthy, like he is important.
I'd argue, Tank at his best the offense has a higher ceiling, but with Joe Mixon, you have a higher floor just because of how consistent he is and what he's able to do. What he's able to do, even just kind of on his own, right? Like say the offensive line misses a block, he's able to get those extra yards. That Tank is a little bit more relying on other things. He's relying on the offensive line. He's relying on. Talk to me, DJ. You shaking your head?
I would flip it.
You say you think Tank gives them a higher floor and Joe gives them a higher floor.
Yeah, because in the playoffs, it's about who can establish the line of scrimmage and who can run the ball better. Like that's when it matters the most. Because I think another thing, especially in the AFC, another thing that we undersell is how cold it's actually going to be in those games. If you want to drop back and throw the ball 50 times, be my guest. But in those situations, unless you're hosting the whole entire AFC, AFC playoff game, you got the number 1 seed. If you gotta go travel to Kansas City, you gotta go travel to Buffalo, you gotta go travel. I mean, technically now, the way things are looking, technically you could go travel to Indianapolis if they win the AFC South. But if you gotta go travel to Pittsburgh, still gonna be cold. You travel to Buffalo, it's gonna be frigid in January. So running the ball becomes even more imperative. So I would flip it. I think Joe raised the ceiling where Tank can kind of raise the floor.
To me,
let me ask you, but
he just made an argument of why it is where it's supposed to be as far as floor versus ceiling, because with Tank also gives you more options as far as ceiling too, right? We talk about ceiling, raising a ceiling. Tank gives you more opportunities for explosiveness, right? I think he helps open up the offense and helps open up Nico more, raising the ceiling versus if you're able to run the ball and you're able to do that at a consistent good level. To me, that helps out on the floor, not the ceiling.
I don't know what that means, but but let me break it down for y'all like this though. All right, you got Tank Dell and Joe Mixon. Which one of those guys is going to take over a game, or who has taken over a game before, and which one of those guys will take over a game? You can easily say that about Joe Mixon. You can't say that about Tank Dell. He can have a big game, but a guy that's taking over, you just can't stop. That's when putting the team on your back.
Facts.
That's Joe Mixon.
Facts. 1,000%.
Okay, so but and let me throw this in there though. So, but if you look at it right on the opposite side of Nico Collins right now, you have a lot of inexperience outside of Christian Kirk, of course, but you got a lot of inexperience, and right, you bring Tank Dell back. You know that Tank is a great route runner. You know what Tank can do as far as the passing game is concerned, and you know that CJ is comfortable throwing to Tank. So even if you say we're going to bring Tank, by that time you still got Chubb and you still got Marks to be able to 1-2 that running back position. But you get, because what we've seen in the divisional round that has taken one of the things that has taken the Texans out, especially on the offensive side of the ball, there's nobody opposite of Nico Collins. And the defense is just the Ravens defense and the Chiefs defense just roll the coverage to Nico and say, well, if y'all going to beat us with John Metchie, if you're going to beat us with Hutchinson, if you're going to beat us with I forgot who else was the Jared Wayne or whatever the case be, if you're going to beat us with those wide receivers, then we deserve to lose.
Yeah, but that's not why they lost that playoff game. It wasn't because of who they had at receiver. That's probably like third reason why they lost that playoff game. And still come back down to the trenches, like 1,000%. And again, like with the way the NFL is now, with a bunch of split safety looks, having a explosive, dynamic wideout, a bunch of that explosive dynamic, that's not gonna get that job done. You got to be able to run that rock consistently. Like I'm looking at the stats right now in the AFC Championship game, playoff game, both teams rushed for over 130 yards. Kansas City had 135, 38, 35 carries, 3 touchdowns. Buffalo had 32 carries.
I mean, did Mahomes have? Mahomes was in that game. You said AFC. You said Kansas City.
Yeah. He had 11 in that one. Josh also had 11. So again, like guys, sometimes Josh is scrambling, but again, like they weren't winning. They're not cutting it through the air because Mahomes only had 26 attempts. Josh had 34, but again, Mahomes only had 26. Granted, he had some scrambles, so he might have dropped back almost 40 times, but it wasn't there. I'm going to tuck it and run. So again, back to, my overall point, just based off of how defenses are playing now, it behooves you to have a stout run game. At least to get through the playoffs, right? Get through the AFC. Super Bowl is a little different because now you're going to play in the warm weather, blah, 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 having a bunch of weapons, bunch of skill players.
You got to make plays.
Yeah, it's a little different because it's a different environment, but it's about getting through the AFC and the elements that you do face from week to week and during that stretch.
Yeah, and I go back to my point though. The only people who have carried the Texans are CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, and Nico Collins to some degree. Tank Dell's career high in catches is 8. He's not carrying the team
Yeah.
I haven't seen
and to that point, we haven't seen that since his rookie. That was his rookie year, really, when he was doing.
Yeah.
Well, he's also
Yeah.
he hasn't played a full season in the NFL either. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Like
I'm
I'm.
just
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just
Go
gonna
ahead.
say really quick. Like it's just and don't get me wrong, because that's an excellent point that you all make, and I get that. But I'm also thinking about, okay, so if you looking at the dynamics of having, Tank Dell and Christian Kirk on the same side, or even if you go 4 wideouts, and now you either got Noel on the field, or you got Higgins on the field, or you got Hutch on the field, and even I mean, because we've seen teams win by passing the ball too in cold weather. And I'm not DJ, like I said, you make a great point. I'm just, I'm just looking at that other side of it. It's like, getting the ball out of CJ's hands quicker, quicker routes or whatever the case may be, still moving them. I feel like as long as the Texans are not in second and long and third and long, and I feel like you can do that with the run game and the passing game, man. We don't know exactly if Mixon comes back and he's fully healthy, we still don't know how he's going to be able to run behind that line. So that's all.
For
Just
sure.
the last thing I want to add.
The offensive line is doing good though, as far as run blocking goes.
Yeah. So Joe be just fine. Like Joe's he's scheme proof in that aspect. I mean, again, like the Steelers and Ravens playoff game, the Ravens ran for 299 yards. The Steelers ran for 29. That they lost by double digits. Like I'm like that when it comes, and then even the playoff game when the Texans won, like I think they rushed for a lot. You know what I'm saying? And then the Chiefs game, what kept them in the game, ironically, was them being that first drive of the second half, where Joe Mixon is ate up the clock. Joe Mixon toting that thing, because they rushed for $150. They actually rushed for $149. Ironically, the Chiefs only rushed for 50. But I know y'all remember how much of a struggle that game was for the Chiefs offensively, right? Like it was a struggle for them, but they were able to take advantage of the fact that the Texans up front couldn't protect CJ. So I go back to my biggest point: trenches. So having a bunch of skill guys, that ain't gonna be why you get past. You win in the playoff, at least right now in this current NFL.
And then the Texans led in the first half of that game, if I'm not mistaken, by a point, right?
I'm looking right now.
I don't.
No, they went halftime down.
Oh,
they were tied. It was like 3-3, 3-6. Then Kansas City scored, and then they kicked the field goal, and it was 6-3 halftime. Then they came down, they scored, and then they missed the extra point.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
know what I'm saying?
The reason it was in that game,
right? And that one drive, they took 10 minutes off the clock. So after that moment, like we're basically in the fourth quarter. They just the Chiefs just went countered and they scored. So that's what I'm saying. Like, so I'm gonna always go.
I guess I just wanted to throw that out there. Chance, my bad.
No. I mean, it's just funny looking back on like how good Joe Mixon was, and we kind of touched. I saw it online too. I think DJ and Jonathan tweeted about it. Another guy that who was good for them when he played. That's no longer with the Texans, but it was also hooping.
Man,
Stephon Diggs, man.
They should have tried. They should have tried to keep Stephon instead of going after Kirk. They could have found Kirk anyway.
If not for their sake, for our sake. Having them brothers was a joy.
No, yeah, for sure.
Looking ahead though, so now the Texans sit 2-3. Their schedule doesn't necessarily get any easier on the road versus a really good Seahawks team. That's national TV game on the Monday night. 49ers, Broncos, Jags. Just looking ahead to their next 4 games of this next quarter of the season, and we look at where they're at currently in the AFC standings, sitting 2-3, and in the AFC South, where you got 2 teams that are 4-1, in the Jags and the Colts. How do you see this Texans outlook? Look at moving ahead on the season and the likelihood of still trying to make that playoff push.
Man, like they're in an interesting spot because they got a first place schedule, so like they're gonna go through a gauntlet regardless. Because Seattle's pretty good. I mean, they're 3-2. We'll see if they can beat Jacksonville this week. That gives a better idea. Ironically, under Mike McDonald, they actually have a better road record and do home record, so they might win that game. They got the Niners, Denver. Denver just knocked off the Eagles. Jacksonville. Then you got Tennessee in there. Then you got Buffalo, Colts, Kansas City, Arizona. We'll see what they are. Vegas, they're through. Then you got the Chargers, and then you got the Colts to end the season. So basically, we really like where we can objectively say those are layups, right? Arizona, Vegas, Tennessee, right? That's like 3 games where we say, all right, layup. Everything else can go either way. You know what I'm saying? And it's rare where like every other game that's go either way, you end up going in your way. You know, you're gonna lose some of those games. So really, they got to finish the year 8-4 to give themselves a shot to make the playoffs or win the division. They got to go 8-4, and then they need the other 2 jokers to basically go 5-9 the rest of the year. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where they're at right now. It is what it is. We'll see if they can be done. Not impossible, but like the Colts this week, they got Arizona. That should be a win. So this should be 5-1. Then they go to the Chargers. We'll see how that goes. They get Tennessee. So we could be looking at the Colts starting the year 6-2. Then they go at Pittsburgh. Then they got home against the Falcons. Yada yada. Then their schedule gets hard on the back end. I'll say that. So we'll see, man. Like I think when it comes to the playoffs, they're gonna just need their defense to keep playing lights out, and hope that the offense can continue to keep track. But I think that every game they'll be in. I don't think they'll probably be like maybe 1 or 2 games, maybe 1 game, maybe 2 games they get blown out. Okay, that happens, right? Everybody loses has a nasty game, but they'll be in a majority of the game, mainly because of that defense. So that's just kind of how I'm seeing it. But man, it's funny how like one play, if like 3 plays go the opposite way, they could be undefeated right now. Objectively speaking.
And to that point, and I'll go to Sarge next on this one, but I think that's just life in the NFL, where like a lot of these games, you call like you said the Titans were a layup, and you call the Cardinals a layup. I don't like the Cardinals are good enough that if you don't show up, they'll beat you, and so they have enough talent, and depending on where you catch them, they could be desperate. I know you mentioned, I think was it Colts have Arizona this week? Was that what you said, DJ?
Yeah.
I mean, look, after the Titans just pissed away that game the way they did on Sunday, like they're a team that's going to be desperate. I don't know, like the Colts are really good, and I don't think they're a fluke, but I don't think the Colts are a team that can just show up and like you chalk it up as a win against Arizona. And so to the larger point, in the league, and DJ, you mentioned it earlier, it is really week to week that if you don't show up, I don't think a lot of people thought the Patriots were going to go into Buffalo and beat them, but they followed the formula of sticking around on the road, and their playmakers made plays in Stephon Diggs, and Drake made, certainly to me, that was his coming out party if you weren't really paying attention to him, before, and he set them up for success, and they were able to get it done and make the plays when needed. A lot of times that's how the game goes, and I think that's why the Texans, after they started out 0-3, they really weren't tripping, and they felt like, and that's what that's why DeMeco Ryans kept saying, hey, I feel like my team is close, is because they were just a couple of plays away from potentially being, you could argue, 3-0, right? And the reality is they're not that now, but, at the end of the day, you have to make plays, and whether that'll be the case when they go to Seattle. And we just saw that Seahawks game in it versus the Bucs. The Bucs, every game this year for them, I'm pretty sure every game this year they've been in a like 1-score game that came down to like the last possession. But the difference is they found ways to win, right? And so whether it's when the Texans go to Seattle, when they play the 49ers, we saw what the 49ers just did on Thursday Night Football, getting their win, and when they play the Broncos, like the Broncos are a good team. So all these games, they're going to have to make the plays at the end, and as we've seen they've been able to execute over the past 2 weeks, and it's looked good. But can they execute when the games are closer, as we'll see in their upcoming schedule?
They're also going to need some blowouts too, because if you try to will your way back into the AFC South leaderboard, it's not going to all be by close wins. That's just virtually impossible. Because like at that point, once it's a 1-possession game, 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, it's anybody ball game. We just saw that with the Titans and Cardinals. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like we saw that with the Texans in 2023, where they had a lot of games go their way, but everybody forgets they lost. They gave the Panthers one of their 2 only wins in 2023.
Was that the Jets? That was just the Jets. The season lost to the Jets too.
Yeah, that was the season lost to the Jets also. With Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson went crazy, so you're gonna need some blowouts in the midst of that, so then like you're not relying on every single week to be like, oh, we're able to steal that game at the end. You know, that's just not sustainable. We see the Chiefs now. They went 11-0 in one-score games last year. This year they're 0-3.
The thing is, though, on their schedule, at least let's take the next 4 games. I don't see a team that they're going to blow out. Like I just don't. They're not going to go to Seattle.
Sure.
I don't think and blow them. All right, they're not going to. You know, if you want to say a team that they might have their best chance, maybe the 49ers, but obviously, like I'm saying, like that's their best chance, and I think we would all agree the 49ers aren't sweet. And then you have the Broncos. You're not blowing the Broncos out. There's just I don't really see a formula for that. And then it's going to be very tough to blow out a divisional opponent in Jacksonville, particularly because they're more talented than, let's say, the Tennessee Titans are. So to me, that's how I kind of see it. Jonathan, what about you?
I mean, to your original point, about the Colts, I look down their schedule. They have a fairly, I don't want to say easy, but a reasonable schedule. And it's, they're capable of beating a lot of the teams on that schedule. I mean, you don't beat a team 40-6, beat the Broncos, and then go toe-to-toe with the Rams and not be a good team. They're doing what Anthony Richardson couldn't do. Daniel Jones is doing what Anthony Richardson couldn't do. He's taking care of the football, and they're feeding Jonathan Taylor, who's just playing at an all-time level right now. So they're the real deal. I mean, even the Jaguars are building some confidence with a win against the Chiefs. Both of those teams have won games that they weren't supposed to win. The Texans have lost games that they were supposed to win. I think that's what's going to hurt them. And I think the Texans have a long uphill battle to win the division because, like y'all said, man, they got the first place schedule, and most of the teams on their schedule are going to be some tough games, especially this next 5-game stretch that they'll play. So I don't think to me, in my opinion, I think if the Texans want to get to the playoffs, they're going to have to get a wild card because I don't know if they're catching up in the AFC South.
The way that real quick to Jonathan, because you brought Jonathan Taylor, is he your offensive player of the year so far with how he's playing?
No. I think Baker Mayfield is playing a little bit better than him.
Which is funny because didn't Nick Caserio call him the MVP today?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, he called him the MVP. But I so for me, right, and I guess I don't want to say that I'm looking at it any differently than you all, but I just, just like you all, I've watched a lot of football as well. And this kind of reminds me, like I've said before, I mean, it's kind of like we were here already in 2023, and especially with the Jacksonville Jaguars and the way that they took off and they only needed one win in the last 3 weeks in order to make the playoffs, and they didn't make the playoffs. And so the way that I look at it is, I don't know, by looking at the schedule, I may see like one blowout win. I think that they could definitely go back into I think they can definitely go into Tennessee and blow them out. I think that I honestly and truly believe that they can blow out the Chargers too, because the Chargers have a lot of offensive line issues going on. I think they had lost one of their linemen, the one that they had just paid. I can't remember his name, but they lost him, and then they turned around and lost Joe Alt as well. And if you look at this past game, you can see that there was a lot of pressure put on Justin Herbert. So, but when I look at this, I feel like, maybe the Texans have gotten all of maybe what they would have experienced later on in the season. Maybe they've already got that out early in the season. I mean, like we said, I think that I told Aaron Wilson this on Sunday. The Texans are one or two plays away from being 5-0 instead of being 2-3, or at least 4-1, because those games that they lost, I mean, and you all have discussed it perfectly about, how the tides could have turned here or there. But I look at the Texans and I feel like if CJ can keep his momentum going, especially coming out of that Seahawks game, if they can go in and they can beat the Seahawks, they don't have to blow out the Seahawks, but if they can just beat the Seahawks in that hostile environment, and CJ has, two or three touchdown passes and, doesn't turn the ball over, then that would be at least like 10 quarters of good football. And we know in this league, momentum can be built at any point in time. I think I wrote in my article the other day that the momentum for the Houston Texans was dead until CJ hit Nico Collins for that 37-yard pass in the against the Tennessee Titans. And ever since that one pass play, they have taken off ever since. And they've just seemed like they're starting to hit a groove. And so maybe they're hitting their groove at the right time. But if CJ can come in with the confidence, I still see them being able to climb out of the hole because in my opinion, I feel like that the Colts and the Jags are going to come back. I think that if the Texans keep playing consistently, the Colts and the Jags will come back to them. I've watched Daniel Jones play, and I know that the Colts have a better team. I just don't know how much I trust him moving forward. And, I trust Trevor Lawrence way more than I would trust Daniel Jones. But when you look at the Houston Texans and when you see, some of the things that they're doing, I just feel like if you can get that confidence that CJ has built and keep him moving and allow him, because the one thing, and y'all can tell me if I'm wrong or not, the one thing that I've been seeing over the last, 5.5 quarters from CJ is him getting comfortable. But it looks like Nick Caley is like, all right, CJ, what are you saying? Let's do that. Whatever you're saying, let's do that. He's getting more control of the offense.
My final point to that would be like, yes, even if let's just say the Texans, are finding their groove, and as you mentioned, like they have momentum on their side, that's fantastic, right? Like hypothetically, if all that is true, the issue is now they just don't have the margin of error. Because the Seahawks, they just played the Buccaneers. If you guys saw that game, like the Seahawks played really well. They played well enough to win that game, but at the end of the day, the Bucs still found a way to win. They had the final possession and they were able to steal one on the road. And so that's the thing. You could play really well against the Broncos or against the 49ers, two teams that you host at home. But if a couple of things don't go your way, you still had a great game. At the end of the day, you lost, and you just don't have that margin of error for the Texans.
But with the defense that the Texans have, the opponents don't have any room for error either. Like, what's the Seahawks quarterback name?
Darnold.
Sam Darnold. I mean, we've also seen Sam Darnold wet the bed a lot too.
But he been hooping though.
Yeah, but I mean, don't they play? They got him. They got Geno Smith. They got Cam Ward again. They got Justin Herbert behind a bad line. Like some of these breaks can go their way. And before we move on, that's why I like the DJ. Was that week 2 that you asked D'Amico about these close games, or was that in the preseason?
Nah, that was week 3 because at that point they had lost 3 in a row. Yeah, like that way.
Yeah. So
we will see as the Texans move forward. Right now, as I mentioned before, sitting at 2-3, enjoying their bye week as they get ready to take on the Seattle Seahawks on Monday Night Football next week. That is it for Texans Cookout. Thanks for pulling up. Hope you enjoyed what was on the grill today. We will see you guys next time. Peace.